for our lives, grateful for our health, grateful for every blessing that you have seen fit to pour out upon us this day and in days past. Father, we're grateful for safe passage to this place this evening through the inclement weather. If there be those who are still on the roads, please protect them. We are grateful, Father, to have this opportunity tonight to study your word, to praise your name in song, to offer these prayers and converse with you. Just to praise and honor you, Father, we are grateful. We pray, Father, that you may accept our worship this evening. Please bless those who will lead us in our Bible discussions here in just a few minutes. Please help them, Father, to recall the lessons that they wish to bring out from your word. For those of us who are listening, may we be attentive, and may we listen, Father, with purpose, intent to find areas in our lives where we might take the things that we hear and learn from your word this evening and allow them to cause us to grow in our faith. Father, we're grateful for your word. We're grateful for the Holy Spirit who has brought it to us. We thank you for its simplicity and its beauty. And we ask, Father, for an increased desire for a better understanding, a deeper understanding of it. Pray that we might spend more time with it so that we may learn more of how you might have us to be in this life and more of what you would have us to teach in this life. Father, bless those who are less fortunate. Please bless those who are sick. We ask that you might grant them comfort and peace. Help us to find opportunities to serve. We have been encouraged tonight, Father, to see and to hear prayers answered in the form of those who have been suffering in the recent past, who are regaining their health. We are so grateful for that, and we praise and honor and thank you for that. Thank you so much for Jesus, Father. We needed a Savior, and you sent him, and we cannot express our gratitude for such a gift. We are grateful for salvation and redemption of sins that Jesus has made available through all that he's done for us, through his death and through his resurrection. And may we ever strive to take full advantage of every spiritual blessing that Jesus has made possible. Please bless us now through the balance of this hour in our service. Please keep us all safe when we leave here tonight and head home. Please welcome us home with you, Father, when this life is over. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good evening. We're in John chapter 2. And we'll be examining verses 3 through 5 and maybe some more, depending on our pace. John chapter 1 ended with Jesus telling Nathanael and everyone else that was present with him that though Nathanael confessed to believe what Philip, his friend, had told him about this one Jesus, and how that Nathanael was at that moment convinced that this was the one the prophets spoke of, the one they were waiting for. And what convinced him was not Jesus walking on water, not performing some massive feat of strength such as Samson might do, nothing like that. Jesus merely saw him under a tree, was able to see inside of him and describe his character to the T, the letter T. And And this convinced Nathanael. And Jesus may be a little bit marveled, and you're going to see greater things than these. And so with that, we see chapter 2 begin with Jesus and his disciples at a marriage feast in Cana of Galilee. This is actually where Nathanael was from. Some commentators have suggested that it was Nathanael's wedding feast. I don't know. There's nothing there that tells us for sure that it is. But one wonders if that were the case, why was Nathanael down delaying with John and his disciples baptizing beyond Jordan when he should have been getting ready for his wedding? I don't know if those things coincide. But Jesus and his disciples are at a marriage feast in Cana of Galilee. These were celebrations. And during the first century in Judea or Samaria or Galilee, wherever Israel or Hebrews people would be, any reason to celebrate was reason to celebrate. They were under Roman oppression, so this was a joyous occasion. This was a happy time. And Mary, who is not named in the gospel, the fourth gospel of John, Mary is there. The mother of Jesus is there as well. Jesus and his disciples are there. So we pick up in verse, and when they had run out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." And I believe we sort of got into a little bit of a, maybe not discussion, but peeling back layers a little bit on what significance there is here with Jesus and his disciples attending this marriage feast. Is there anything to it at all? Am I trying to grab ends of rope and tying them off that ought not to be tied together? I'm not sure that I'm stretching here to do that, because what is God's stance on the institution of marriage? What does God think about marriage? Certainly approves of it. And, well, I can take them away. But where do we get that from? I'll leave it up there. Where do we get that from? God certainly approves of it, but where's the first instance of that? Adam and Eve, right? Where a man should leave father and mother and cleave to his wife, the two will become one. Well, although marriage is not said there in that verse, certainly that is what is inferred. That's what is described and what we infer from that. What does the Hebrew writer say in Hebrews 13 and verse 4? Marriage is, what's the word used there? Honorable. I just wanted us to see that Jesus attending this and having the same sort of mindset, or yes, we can say feeling towards marriage, is shared with the Father and the Son. So we can see why Jesus would be here. This is a good thing. We got into another thing we can see if we look just a little bit at that the character, and yes, even the style of Jesus, that he is at a celebration. Is there anything to that? Should we read into that a little bit? Can we see this part of the Son of Man maybe in a different way than we never had before? Ken?
Elsewhere he's criticized because he didn't fast.
A gluttonous man, a friend of wine bibbers, right? Jesus was one who was with the people. There's a word that we brought into our class, ascetic. A-S-C-E-T-I-C. I doubt you used the term since the last time we brought it up. Meaning someone who basically abstains from frivolity or joyous occasions, usually based on a religious reason. Jesus was not an ascetic. Jesus was among the people. He was there with them, celebrating in whatever way they would have at this feast, and his disciples likewise. I like how Kaufman describes Jesus. Jesus, well, he was one of the ones that used this term ascetic. Jesus was not an ascetic, rather a person of lovable social grace who adored and blessed any company in his presence. Is that where it ends? Oh, the Son of Man came eating and drinking. Matthew 11, verse 19. I like how Kaufman has this kind of a little bit flowery there. He was one that adored and blessed any company by his presence. We often think of the Son of God as rightly the one of whom the prophets and Moses and David spoke. This king, right? A prince of peace, fit for royalty, true blood heir to a throne, certainly so, and deserving of all said honors and glory. But do you ever see Jesus in this light, being with common people during what for all intents and purposes, how many Jewish people would get married even in the first century? A common, yes, a feast. And Jesus is part of it, is there amongst them. In this account, we see Jesus and his disciples joining in this celebration of this new bridegroom. So all that for me to ask this question. Why, if there's anything to it, why is that important? Why would that be important? Is that important at all? That Jesus is there at a place like this, or found in other parts in Scripture with people that no one else would give the time to, in situations where you wouldn't expect high royalty to necessarily be. What's the importance of that? Ron? Certainly. And we'll see that as we go through this. Randy. Is there something about someone who gives off a certain air, let's say, or a charisma, we might say, that draws people in and allows them to let their guard down a little bit? I don't know about you, but when I am in any type of crowd for a little while, I know this is going to surprise you, I have my guard up. Who said no way? I do. I don't necessarily immediately gravitate towards strangers. I mean, I'm getting better. I see new patients every day, and I've figured out ways to break down that wall of it's not trust, but there's always something like, I don't know how to get through to them, to help them get through and have this be the best that it can be, the treatment. Usually it's humor. Are you surprised at that? But I keep up sort of a wall. But when you have someone that has a certain charisma, or someone that is even willing to just speak with me, I'm willing to listen. And they were willing to listen. As we'll see maybe in later on verses 11, 12, those type. But anyway, there's so that question that I asked, that we spent 5 minutes, me basically trying to answer, and Ron and Randy helping with that, leads to another question. How then did Jesus himself describe his entire purpose? How did Jesus describe his entire purpose? And that's sort of twofold. Someone turn to John chapter 18 and look at verse 37. John 18, verse 37. Two things factor into the answer. And maybe more, but these two, for our purposes this